Welcome to Wilaker, a Journeyers podcast. I'm Will Abels, and this is my story.
Left home, gone coast to coast in a hybrid car with a bag of clothes. Back on the wagon, back on the road. Would you have my back when I'm all alone? On a wing and a prayer, all out of favors. Hope to get $1 and a smile out of stranger. As the story is told and the plot unfolds, we laugh not to cry, but it's not a joke. No, it's not a joke. It's not a joke.
How about that new intro from Kenny Sharp? It took a minute to get it, but Kenny's a busy guy. For example, he is going to be on Kelly Clarkson this Thursday. So if you're listening to this, that means in 2 days you can check out Kenny on the Kelly Clarkson show. But thank you, Kenny, for the intro. I'll get that uploaded to the rest of the episodes. You know, and it finally feels like we have a podcast. I just needed a proper intro, not a consistent schedule of trying to get these out. I needed an intro song. That's what it was. How dare I live in Nashville and not have an intro song? But Kenny Sharp came through. He recorded it originally in I think he was in Dublin, in Ireland, and then he got me a proper recording, and it's better than any episode I'm going to put out. I can tell you that much. But to catch you up, welcome to Chapter 2. I know it feels like it should be longer, but if you didn't know, there was a lot happening, and you know, let's just keep it to the minimum, which was the fact that Nashville, half the city lost power. Some of the city still doesn't have power. There's still residents that don't have power, and I was running between 3 different houses, caring for some dogs, and had some other personal stuff happening. And emotionally, I was pretty burned out. Physically, I was pretty burned out. And this is not the easiest thing to get out because, yes, I actually enjoy doing this. I always feel really good when I'm done. But I still also have to, edit the whole thing. And then I also have to do clips because you sweet little piggies want your clips. And I got to book myself and I got to manage my whole touring schedule. And somewhere in there, all that's unpaid, by the way. So somewhere in there, I have to go make money. And so it's really difficult to get on a proper schedule, but I am trying. I'm going to try and do this twice a week, try and hammer this out, get to the end. And I think with some time, I'll be able to get on a proper schedule. So thank you for your patience. And on to Chapter 2. So to pick up where we left off, I am going to go back a little bit and then go forward. But right now, if you listen to the first chapter, I am in Portland, Maine, one of my all-time favorite places to perform. It's my first time back since 2019. In 2020, I was supposed to record my second album and potentially my first special. I think what I was going to probably do was put it on YouTube, but I was talking to some production companies. Some were friends, some were people that were not just friends, but we were kind of figuring out if we could make this thing happen, and I've been given a date from Empire Comedy Club, so there was something that was going to happen in May of 2020. That never happened. So this is my redemption arc. I'm going back in May of 2025. I'm going to open for my comedy hero, or at least one of them, Rory Scovel. And it's also coming up on a year to the date of the big, just the worst accident I've ever been a part of. I flipped my car. I walked away relatively unscathed, but mentally I didn't realize how much it affected me. And that will manifest itself in its own way shortly. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But part of this was I was beginning the Experience Files tour. And so when I first quit drinking, I didn't know who I was as a comic. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who I was as a person. And so I put together this big tour. And, one thing I had sort of lost at that point in comedy was it wasn't really as much fun for me as it used to be. And also I was bored, and not to sound negative about the Nashville comedy scene, but there's really not a lot of comics here that can challenge me that I watch and I go, oh, I can't do that. or, "Ooh, I don't wanna follow them." I can follow anybody, and that includes the heavy hitters. I don't mind following the Dusty Slays and the Nate Bargatzes of the world. In fact, I kind of want to, because when I'm in New York, you have to every single time. Those are the kind of people that are on every show, and I don't have that here, and I thought kind of, well, now that I have to learn how to do comedy sober, I'll jumpstart that by going on the road and opening for people I admire, people that I respect, so that I can kind of relearn comedy. And over the course of that tour, I did do that. And it was pretty cool because the tour was supposed to kind of wrap up when I got back to Nashville at the end of June, and it sort of extended to the end of the year, and I got to open for way more people than I thought I was going to, than I had initially scheduled. So it just kinda kept going and going, and it was really cool. So this was sort of the beginning of that, and it actually started in Charleston at Duckworth's Comedy Club. Hi, sorry, I said Charleston, I meant Charlotte. Duckworth's Comedy Club is in Charlotte, and that's where I opened for Learnmore Jonasi. Anyway, enjoy the rest of it. And I was opening for Learnmore Jonasi, or I was sorry, I was hosting for him. I was supposed to feature, I got moved to host because he brought a feature, and that was really interesting. I tried to learn something from every weekend of shows I did, especially in the clubs, and that one was really interesting because Learnmore he's a America's Got Talent guy, and he's African, so his fan base, they're either, like, second generation African living in America, or maybe even first generation, or they're, fans of America's Got Talent. And so it was really difficult to host because they knew him so well and they didn't know who I was. So I did spend the whole weekend trying to figure out, like, how do I talk to people that are waiting for me to stop talking so they can get to their headliner? And that does happen. It hasn't happened so often to me that I was used to it. So it was cool. It was an interesting experience. It was great. He crushed. He was so good, and it was so great to watch him. And again, I walked away from that was how important physicality is when telling a story, because that's what he's very good at. He's very physical, and he's very funny, and he's a great storyteller. Um, Worth checking out. So now we are in Portland, Maine. I, you know, long day, just the flight to get there. I flew into Boston, and then I took a bus up, and just I don't know, I forget how early my flight was. I mean, it was like 5 AM, 6 AM or something, because I had to get as cheap as possible to try and save money for the rest of this tour because I'm trying to support myself through all of June, and I just cannot get ahead of the debt that I had put myself in the year prior. And so it's just like every time I think I'm ahead, it just hit with another loan, another temporary loan, a payday loan, whatever it is, and, just personal credit cards, anything. So I'm just really struggling. So I get this cheap flight. Super pumped to be back in Boston, even though it's just the airport, going to the bus. But like that's where I started comedy, so it's a little slice of home for me. And so popped in, felt good. Get on the bus, going up. No intention of drinking. I had had my little experience with it in April, and I was like, no, I really have to quit. But once I had those couple of days of drinking, then my brain started going, all right, but how do I drink if I come back? Right? Because when I first started drinking again, it was in April, and it started off with, like, just a couple, like, drinks, and then after, like, 4 or 5 days, I'm drinking all day again. And so, I quit, got myself dried out, but then, like, about 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I'm like, "I really do wanna drink again." So then you start saying to yourself, "Okay, well, if I go back, what do I do?" And I analyzed the situation from the first time, and I was like, "Well, I just drank too much too quickly." I mean, I had taken 5 months off. Of course that it was gonna hit me as hard as it did. So if I drink again, I need to pace it and blah, blah, blah. But I had no intention of drinking when I went to, Portland. And like I said at the end of the last chapter, I finally get to Portland. My friends are working that I'm staying with, so I gotta kinda kill some time until I see them. And basically, I'm just gonna shower and go to the show. And I didn't just have the Thursday night show. I also had, another show at the Laugh Shack right after, and then I had to go back to Empire and close out, just like they had, like, this comedy competition they were doing, and then they asked me to be, like, a special, um, not headliner, but a special closer for it, and it was gonna be me and my friend, Derek Humphrey, who was also in town, opening for Dusty Slay at the theater across the street. That night, it was an insanely good night of comedy in Portland, Maine. There was Rory Scovel at the Empire Comedy Club. There was Luke Null. playing at Laugh Shack, and Dusty Slay was doing the theater, and then Derek Humphrey's in town, I'm in town. Danny Dunn was the other performer with Rory and I, and he's on tour with Rory, and he's so funny, he's so good. But great night of comedy. Like, truly, I couldn't have asked for a better night of comedy, and I got to do 3 spots. So I had to kill some time, and I'm walking around town, and like I kind of said at the end of the last chapter, I just this overwhelming urge to have a Shipyard beer, specifically Shipyard. And, another reason I loved Portland so much was I used to brewery hop there all the time. It was where I kind of not probably not the first time I fell in love with craft beer, but it was where I really explored it the most. And so there's just something hit me. And I guess whatever that little devil on your shoulder is, it was like, well, you weren't really planning on quitting, so why not try it now? Why not try it now before you're kicking off one of the biggest tours you've ever done? It's, in your mental comeback, and why not sabotage it, right? I mean, that is probably the story of my career, is just how much self-sabotaging I've done, and it's mostly wrapped around drinking. I mean, earlier today, I had to send an email. This is a side note, but I had to send an email to a production company about a project I'm trying to get off the ground, and I was like, if this one person is involved in this, it's dead before it starts. And so I sent the first email with the 2 names I was recommended, and they didn't respond, so I followed up today, and then I got 4 people responded, and one of those people that I had a falling out with a couple years ago in Atlanta was on it, and I was like, "Oh, this project's already dead." And it was in that moment, I mean, I don't mind telling the story. I had just gotten into I got in my first car accident. I totaled the car by hitting a deer. I joke about it now. It's not that big of a thing, but that was like a moment where I was trying to like work on my drinking, and totaled the car. Should have canceled the weekend of shows, didn't. And then I went down to Atlanta anyway, and it just hit me how genuinely fucked I was to not have this car. And like, I had so much car trouble up to that point. So it was just like, when does it stop? And so, my girlfriend at the time had asked me to not drink, and I just got down to Atlanta. And I mean, I was drinking in the car ride down. I wasn't driving, but I was just like hammered. And so by the time we got to the first night, the shows were fine, but the second night, I was just drinking so heavily. And I got to the show, and I like blew the light, and just all this other stuff. Profusely apologized to the producer when I found that it was a problem, and apparently that apology was not good enough. Cut to 3 years later, and now this person most likely is going to shoot this project dead before I even attempt to get it off the ground. So just a little insight into like what my drinking can do. It can really, but again, no one's looking. I'm not going to name names of that show or the person, but no one's looking at that show and being like, well, that's really where I made it. So, it's self-sabotage, and it's like I'm burning a bridge with somebody but, it's not that big of a deal, but it's still a coworker, if you want to think of it that way. Anyway, so I wanted a lobster roll, and I really wanted a beer, but I wasn't going to do it. At first I wasn't going to do it. So I sit down at this place. It was on the dock, and I said this before, but this guy walks by, looks like the captain from SpongeBob at the beginning, and I thought it was my friend Dylan, and I was like, that can't be Dylan. And he's like carrying 2 kegs. I mean, honestly, looked good, but I was like, that can't be him. So I didn't say anything, and I kind of wish I had, because if I had, I don't think I would have started drinking. But he walks by, puts his stuff, he drops these kegs off, he walks away, and I get an NA beer and a lobster roll. And I drink the NA beer, and I'm like, and it's a good NA beer, it's a good NA IPA, and I'm like, good job, all right, you didn't do it. And then I go back inside, and I just order a beer, and the thing is, you order inside, and then you have to go out to the outside bar and pick it up. And I bought it, it was like $7 or $8, and I'm holding the ticket, and I'm having this moment where I'm like, you don't have to drink this, And then something about wasting the money. I mean, I was looking for any excuse to drink, truthfully. And I was like, no, you can't waste the money. And I started to walk out, and then I just went to the bar, got the drink, had it, and I just was like, all right, here we go. So yeah, so now I'm drinking again. And I was doing my best to be in control, but at that point I'd taken another month off. So I had the one beer, I feel okay. Finally get in touch with my friends, get home, shower, drop some stuff off, and then I go to my friend's bar, Ovid. He has a bar called Room for Improvement. If you're ever in Portland, he has Room for Improvement and Cuties. And I haven't seen him in probably 6 years. The same last time I saw him was 2019. And so I go in, and he knew I was quote unquote sober now, and I'm sitting there talking to him and two other bartenders, and then they were about to do shots or something. I forget how it came up, but he was like, "Yeah, I told Leia, his partner, he was like, I told her that you don't drink anymore and that you're staying with us." And she was like, "Oh no." I was like, "Oh no, I drink again." And I made it seem as if I'd been drinking, because I didn't want him to know. Like, actually, I started drinking 25 minutes ago, or whatever it was, 45 minutes ago, an hour ago. And so I just played it off as if like I had just been drinking, right? And he was like, "Oh," and I was like, "Yeah, but no whiskey." And then we did shots. Whiskey eventually made its way back into my life, but I was trying really hard not to drink whiskey. And it's so funny how the guilt that just overtakes you is insurmountable, right? And cut to a couple weeks ago, Ovid was actually visiting here in Nashville. And, at that point, I'm coming up on 6 months sober. And I actually got a chance to talk to him about it. And he even said, he was like, "You said you weren't going to do shots of whiskey and blah, blah." And he's like, "I felt so guilty because I felt like I was forcing you to do this. I felt like I was creating this bad habit." And, and that's this kind of situation comes up a lot over the next few months where I did tell most people, most friends that I was drinking again. And their reactions were always very back and forth, right? Like my parents, I never told. I told them towards the end. I told them towards the end, right, when it was about to get bad. So, they ended up working out my favor in its own way. But I told my siblings, told most of my close friends, and you have this really funny reaction where when you tell them, you hear the concern in their voice, or they just don't care because they don't know. One thing that I was really good at is hiding my drinking. And if you saw me at my worst, if you're listening to this and you saw me at my worst, that's because I care about you. That's because I trust you. And so I knew I could let my guard down and actually show you my worst in terms of drinking. But if you always thought like, "Oh, Will doesn't have a drinking problem," it's because, don't take it the wrong way. It's not that I don't like you. It's just that you're not part of my inner circle. And so I worked really hard to make sure that you don't notice. And that's sort of what happened in Portland over the next couple days is I just worked really hard to make sure nobody noticed, but I actually was drinking a little. I wasn't drinking as much as I was the first time around in April, but I was drinking more than I should have been given the opportunity that I had in front of me. I will learn months later, the more I started opening for people like this, it's just part of the job. It's a highlight of my career at this point, but it becomes very normal. At some point, you just have to look at this and go, "Yeah, let's act like we've been here. This is the job." And that is eventually I got there in terms of featuring for some of these bigger acts. But in that moment, that's not how I felt. I was nervous, and now I was adding the added stress of drinking again on top of it. And so hang out, have a couple drinks, and then go to the first show. Everyone's exhausted. Everyone's truly exhausted. It's a Thursday show. It's the kickoff show. It's whatever. And I wasn't even able to like enjoy Rory's set, but got to meet Rory, got to meet Danny. Luke Null was hanging out with us. And then we're all chatting, getting to know each other. Easiest hang I've had in a green room in a while. And I'm having a beer and I'm okay. Like I'm doing okay. And do the set. Not the best set I've ever had in my entire life. Not the worst. I just did the set. And I didn't realize that I hadn't been on stage in like 2 weeks. And that is one of the problems I find with Nashville is I don't get enough stage time. So then I go on the road and I got a headliner, I got a feature, and it's a lot of time. It's a lot of time. And it does wear on you. It's like it's not like riding a bike, but it's more like when you're training for a marathon, like you get a tolerance up at some point. And if you don't do it consistently, you kind of lose that tolerance. So talking that much, it exhausts you. If you're a public speaker, it's exhausting when you're done. And so I didn't have any tolerance built up for how much talking I was about to do that weekend on top of the added stress that I was giving myself. So do the first set, goes great. I meet with I make sure it's okay with Rory that I'm going to go do another set. Um, Watched as much as his set as I could. Then I went down to the Laugh Shack, which was like that was my one of the first times I got to headline was at Laugh Shack at Lincoln's. It was so much fun. So it was great to be back. Honestly, not the best show that night, but like I said, a lot of comedy around town, so it's kinda hard to fill all these rooms, but it was so great seeing everybody. It was good seeing the showrunners, and I run into my buddy Derek Humphrey, and Derek's great. If you get a chance to watch Derek's comedy, go watch it. But I knew Derek was opening for Dusty. Dusty's sober. Derek, I can't remember if he had quit drinking. I think he's done drinking, but he never seemed to have a problem in the first place. I think it was just something he was like, "I don't wanna do this anymore." And I was nervous that if Derek saw me drinking, he was gonna tell Dusty about it, and I was gonna get back to Nashville. Also, who cares if that happened? You know, like, who who is gonna judge someone for slipping up in a situation like that? But that's what I was thinking, right? And so I was trying to drink a beer at Laugh Shack and hide it from Derek at the same time, and I left it at the bar, and I sat at the comics table, and then the bartender very kindly brought me the beer, and I was like, "God damn it. God damn it." And then Derek sees it, and he even said, he was like, "Wow, I'm surprised you're drinking again." And again, it's an immediate red flag. It's an immediate warning to stop, to just quit right there. But I was like, "No," and I made up some bullshit where I was like, "Yeah, I've been drinking a little bit, but it's not as bad as it used to be." Which at that point, it was true. It was not as bad as it used to be in that moment, 3 hours after my first drink in a while. So the set that show just it happens. Like it's like I said, it wasn't the best. So then I gotta go back and we got to now do the final show. And I got back to Empire and I had like a couple shots and a few more drinks. Didn't eat that much. Been up since 5 a.m. Uh and the one thing I didn't know is that the audience carried over from the Rory show into this final show for this competition. So they'd already seen me and I'd done 20, 25 minutes before. So I did not all of my material, but I did my set already. And so I was like, "Oh, cool. I'll just do my set again for this thing." And I get up and I say something and they yelled one of my punchlines at me and I was like, "Oh no." And they were like, "Yeah, we already saw you." So if I was sober, I could have done the Rolodex and just adjusted the set, done some old jokes, done something new, but because I was so drunk, I couldn't think of new jokes. So I kinda stumbled through it for a minute, and then I just went, "I'm really high." And because that had happened, like, a couple weeks prior, I had gotten high and done a show, and I realized, like, I don't have any tolerance for weed, so I, like, could not remember the jokes. So I just kinda went to that and just kept saying, "Alright, I'm really high." So I tried to get through the jokes, couldn't do it. I was like, "You know what, guys? Derek's so much better." And I just brought Derek up, gave him a great intro and brought him up. And then I watched Derek's set and I went home and just the most tired I've ever been. Like so exhausted. And I wasn't really paying attention to how I was feeling. I wasn't paying attention to my body or anything like that. So go to bed, wake up pretty early. Um, I want to try and enjoy Portland as much as I possibly can. And I also am like, even though I'm drinking again, I'm not going to let this ruin anything, right? Now this was a weird, um, I'm gonna say it's a negative, but it wasn't because this is sort of what Wilaker is about. So the next few months of drinking, I don't know if it was because I was looking for this, and so it was like kind of I was kind of manifesting, where I was looking for it, so it was happening. But almost every day, I started having interesting conversations with strangers. And it was because I was back in the bars again, and I was looser and that kinda stuff. Um, and the first day that did happen. And so I'm kinda walking around, I'm trying to be good about my drinking, and I'm not trying to start too early, I'm trying to get a little exercise in, so I knew if I just walked around, I'd be okay. I'm kinda bouncing between the 2 bars that Ovid owns, and then I go out on exploration of my own. I'm checking in with Rory, like, we're kind of we can't really figure out a schedule because 'cause they're at one spot trying to get lobster, and, like, there's a line, and I'm in another spot trying to just get oysters, and it's just the whole thing. But I go up this one place to get oysters and, like, some kinda sandwich, and meet this old couple who have just been married for like 60 years, and we're both waiting to get tables or get like a spot at the bar or something. So we're just sort of at this like weird shelf with our beers, and we just start talking. And I'm a single guy, I've been in and out of relationships. You know, tend to fall pretty hard if I really like. I either fall really hard or I completely am just dismissive, which is not great. But just hearing that, like, how in love they were talk about how they met, all these funny stories, and it's just such a I love that. I love someone's unique story, and, we're having a couple beers, and it's nice, it's familiar, and the anxiety I was feeling the day before is now gone about the drinking. Now I'm like, "It's out in the open, I'm doing this, and I'm gonna be in control." So, nothing bad happens. Have this great conversation, have a great meal, I go home, I take a nap, I get up, now we have 2 shows tonight, Friday night, and now I get to really watch Rory work, you know? And so, do both my sets, very happy with both of them, and then I watch Rory's hour, and it is the funniest thing I've it's the funniest set I've, like, ever seen. I am dying. I am dying. It is so funny. And, like, this is someone that I've watched my entire career. Like, in 2016, when I was about to do my first half hour called Hey Guys, I was really having some kind of like, "What do I do? What do I do?" And he released, Rory Scovel Tries to Stand Up for the first time. And I watched it, and it was such a good special that some people actually thought he was trying stand-up for the first time because of the way he can perform and slip in and out of character, and I loved it, and it gave me inspiration to kinda be loose and be yourself and all this kinda stuff, and so when I watched him again, I remember thinking, "Oh, I can headline, but that is how you make fans." Like, just all his jokes were Rory Scovel jokes, and sometimes I can hear myself writing, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm just writing some bit to, be topical or to get views if I clip it out," that kinda thing. But everything he does is very much in his voice, and that can be hard these days, I think, in comedy, is I think you start to I think people are losing their voice, and they're not trying to sound original, they're just trying to get clips, and the clips that do the best usually are pretty hack, or they're crowd work, and but he's just all over the place, and I'm dying, I'm in tears laughing, and I was like, "This," and I think about where I was a year prior where I'm like, I don't remember if it was the exact day, but I was, like, on bed rest for, like, days contemplating suicide, and I knew I wasn't gonna actually do it because my sister would raise me from the dead and kill me, but just how much pain I was in, how alone I felt, and how dark everything was, and then a year later, I'm watching my favorite comedian after just performing in front of him, and I get to watch his new hour that he's been running on the road since, and so if you get a chance, he's coming through Nashville on the 18th, go catch him, just follow him and go see the tour, and it's just this incredibly special moment, to be back in Portland, to be watching Rory, and to just be feeling like a comedian. And so I do both sets, everything goes fine, seems to go fine, and then that's it, right? So I go back to the apartment, sleep again, and very similar day the day before, but I'm drinking a little bit more than I was on Friday. And I don't really know. I think it was just kind of like "Oh, this is vacation, I can do this," or whatever it is. And I'm still being very mindful, I had a really funny I wanted to watch Man U, and so I went to this one bar. It's funny, it's not the bar that I had my first beer at, but it's the bar that I looked at and I thought, "Oh, I want a Shipyard beer." I ended up going there. So I go in, I wanna watch Man U, cannot figure it out, and so next thing I know, I'm standing in the middle of this bar holding the Roku remote, typing in my Peacock, and as far as I know, that bar still has my Peacock account, so I could watch Man U. No one else in that bar wants to watch Man U, but I was like, "I have to do this." Watch it, have a couple beers, go about my day, keep bouncing between bars, and then I had the shows that night, hit a couple breweries, do the whole thing, I walked the dog I walked, Ovid's dog, which, of course, I did, and then the first show is like the first show is just it's just I can't I feel like there's been 10 shows in my life that you just go, "Oh, this is the best feeling in the world." And they're not that they're far and few between, it's just that I don't get to do a ton of club weekends, and the cool thing is since that moment I have, but up to that point I had not, and every word I said was just up, like, just this huge roar, and then I'm getting into a groove, I'm riffing a little bit, I mean, I'm lo I'm doing it in front of Rory, so I'm like, "This is fucking awesome," right? And so I just yeah, just all of us just crush, and then Rory crushes again or whatever, and it's great. And there's that little voice in your head. If you do comedy, you're like, "Okay, the Saturday early show went great. The Saturday late show is gonna suck." And that's sort of what happened. That's sort of what happens is, like, this show, we all were like, "There's no way it's gonna get any better than that." Now I get off of that. Energy's super high. At that point, I would have done an hour and about 45 minutes of comedy over the last 2 days. That's the most comedy I've done, in a very long time. Like, even when I was in sorry, I said Charleston earlier, I meant Charlotte. Um, but even when I was in Charlotte, I was hosting, so I was only doing, like, 10 minutes up top. I only did 50 minutes for the whole weekend. So now I'm at an hour and 45, and I got one more show left. I've done other shows, and after that show, I felt something shift in my body. I felt something shift in my mind, and again, I wasn't drinking, like, excessively. I was, like, having, more than I was 3 days ago when it was 0, but I had, like, a shot at the bar for the next show, and the weekend's starting to hit me a little bit. Like, the exhaustion of performing, of walking around nonstop. It was raining a lot, so I was doing a little bit of that, like, not getting the best, like, I didn't get bad sleep, but not the best sleep, and just sort of being out of your element, waking up at 5 AM on Thursday, knowing I gotta get up at 4 AM or 4:30 the next day to catch my bus down to my flight. Like, that all starts hitting me a little bit. And so I'm sitting there on the second show. I do my set, not my favorite one of the night. Had to do a little crowd work. They were kind of tough. I felt like I was pulling teeth a little bit. And then I get out and Rory gets up and I hit this wall, like this insane wall where I'm like, I don't feel right, And I know that some of it was the alcohol, but it was just more than that. Like my whole being didn't feel right. And looking back, I think the accident from the year prior was starting to seep in a little bit, and I think, like, my dopamine was probably all over the place because now I'm drinking again, a little stressed about that, I'm a little off in general. I've also just had this incredible weekend, so, like, I'm happy, but I don't feel right. And so Rory gets on stage, and then Ovid texts me, and he's like, "Hey, like, if you need a ride back, I'm about to." It's like 11 o'clock at night. Like, it's getting late, and I have to be up at 4 or whatever it is, 5. And I was like, "Yeah, I'll take that ride." So I didn't even get to say bye to Rory. Like, I had his number. It wasn't a big deal. I told him I was probably gonna leave before his set. But I remember just sitting there, and I was like, I don't feel right." And instead of feeling jovial or ecstatic, I just felt really sad and really off. And so I went down the back door because I didn't wanna go in front of the showroom, and got in Nava's car, went back, and then I got up. We all got up at, like, 5:30 in the morning, like, exhausted, just exhausted, and they dropped me off at the bus, and I try and sleep on the bus for the 2 hours down to Boston, and I cannot shake whatever this feeling is. And then I get on my plane. Oh, and I remember I went to the bar in Boston because I was like, "Well, maybe I just need a beer." Like, maybe if I have a beer, maybe I'm just hungover, like, I have been drinking for 3 days. And even though it didn't feel excessive, uh, you go from 0 to anything, you're gonna feel it, right? I also just did, 145 an hour and 45 minutes of comedy, which is now up to 2 hours plus. I'm not used to it. Like, everything's everything's just off, right? And so I remember I go to the bar at the airport in Boston at Logan, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't serve beer until, 11." And my flight's at, like, 11:15. Like, it's, like, starts boarding at, like, 11:15. And I was like, "I'm not leaving till I get this goddamn beer." And I sat at the bar. I was not the only one. There was other people there, but we sat there from 10 to 11, and, I had my coffee, had breakfast, and I sat there just waiting for this beer. And and it's just and that is what my relationship to alcohol is, like, once it starts, I can't stop it, Like, I can break the cycles, and I have, and I've continued to, but it's really tough for me because, like, once I just go, "Okay, I'm gonna drink," yeah, I just drink, that's all I do. So I sit there, 11 o'clock. She gives me the beer, chug the beer, get on the flight, and I go straight to dog sitting, this pup Snoop, who I'm actually currently watching at this moment. But I remember getting back and just dead to the world. And I was like, "All right, well, we have 10 days, maybe less, until you're going on tour for the next 4 weeks. you have to make more money. Like, you don't have rent even put away yet. Like, you're gonna have to, like, go straight into driving for Uber and everything. And I got back, and I remember being like, "I can't do shit. Like, I can't do anything. Like, I don't feel right." And so I, like, checked on my cat at some point, went back to Snoop's, and I got in bed, and I didn't get out of bed till, like, noon the next day. And I was like, "Oh, something's not right." And that is the end of chapter 2. I wish there was more in there where it was, like, this, like, kind of wild, like, "Oh my god, and I partied, and then I got laid," and all that kinda stuff. That's what's sort of strange about all this is, like, you know, early 30s and late 20s Will raged. Like, raged, you know? And now at this age, like, the my foray back into drinking was, like, it wasn't about the party. Like, this is how I know it's a sickness because it was, like, a necessity, right? It had nothing to do with having fun, being social, because I was being social. I'm always social. But it was just there was this voice in my head that was like, you need this." And then unfortunately, I did really well on all the shows. So if I had bombed, like bombed, even one of those shows, I probably would have quit right away. I would be like, "I can't do that again." But because I did well, and one of those shows exceptionally well, I was like, "I'm gonna be drinking and I'm back," you know? And one thing that was great was watching Rory, that energy, the positivity around him, and just how good he is, that I was gonna be able to bring with me at some point. I'm not gonna jump ahead, but I was able to bring this charisma and uniqueness that he has, and I was able to go, "Okay, that's Rory Scovel. Now I'm gonna go be Will Abels." So that has been chapter 2 of Wilaker. Thanks so much for being patient, bearing with me, and going through this, but that has been chapter 2. That was Portland. That was opening for Rory. I mean, I really do. I wish I had these crazy party stories, but, like, and the thing is, like, our conversations in the green room, it was just like two buds talking. I mean, it was very natural. It was very comfortable. I really enjoyed it. It was a tough situation to be in because I'm also a fan. So you're trying not to be starstruck. You're trying to be a peer, but, I'm talking to in my mind, a legend. So it was pretty awesome. But that was Portland, Maine. That was Empire Comedy Club. I'll list all the comics I mentioned, all the bars I mentioned, and the club, all their Instagram handles. They'll be listed in the info section on wherever you're listening to this podcast. And that's chapter 2. This has been Wilaker, a Journeyers podcast. Thank you for listening. Be safe. I hope if you don't have your power, I hope you get your power back. And if you still don't have power, give me a call. I'll make you a cup of coffee. My God. All right, be safe, everyone.
Left home, gone coast to coast in a hybrid car with a bag of clothes. Back on the wagon, back on the road. Would you have my back when I'm all alone? On a wing and a prayer, all out of favors. Hope to get $1 and a smile out of stranger. As the story is told and the plot unfolds, we laugh not to cry, but it's not a joke. No, it's not a joke. It's not a joke. Ooh.